Well, I don't hold out a lot of hope, but maybe some of you went and got your table pack because I'm there. There's no doubt that when students underperform on this part, it's because they just didn't do the practice. Because there's really nothing complicated about calculating depreciation. It's just you got to go through these prescribed steps, and so you either know the steps or you don't. So, if you did, here we go. If you didn't, it's never too late to pause and go get them. So we got a taxpayer who's put in service some equipment and different things during 2022, and maybe considering one more piece of 7-year property for 4,000 that you would put in service in late 22, right, December 12th. So basically, we got to do the depreciation calculation, right? So in case you hadn't noticed, because you don't know whether 40% were placed in service in the fourth quarter until the end of the fourth quarter, you don't really depreciate assets for tax purposes until year end, because you may not know what convention you need to apply, for example. Okay, so in this case, we've got all these items plus an additional item for $4,000 on December 12th. So as I mentioned, really the name of the game is figure out what table you need to use. And if you recall from that previous video, for tangible personal property, which by the way, all of this is, right? There's no real property inside any of this. It's going to be either mid-quarter or half year. So really we just need to figure out, do we have a mid-quarter or a half year problem going on? So I've reorganized everything in the order in which it was placed in service so that we can isolate items placed in service in the fourth quarter. So that would be the new item plus anything that was previously listed, which is the item in October. That's a total of 18,000. 18,000 divided by the total amount placed in service, which is 43.5, is 41%. And since that is greater than 40%, the mid-quarter convention applies. Okay, so now we at least know which tables we need to go use. So let's start with, here I need to move my little box out of the way so I can click through the slides. I know you can't see it, but I can. It's the recording box. So start with the copier. What is the convention? Well, we know it's mid-month, right? Everything placed in service is going to be mid-month. When was the copier placed in service? And in case you forget, we can go back and take a peek. The copier was placed in service in January, right? So January, yeah, my voice cracked. In January, that's Q1. And what is the recovery period? It's 5 years, right? And I tend to give the recovery periods, although you'll find in a short time you'll be able to identify kind of 5s and 7s pretty easily. In any event, you could go to your table, and table A2 is mid-quarter convention for property placed in service in the first quarter. So we've got 5-year property. We're in its first year, right? So we just go find 35%, multiply the cost of the copier, $1,500 by 35%, and you're going to take $525 worth of depreciation in 2022. And that's really all there is to it. So how about the computer? Well, we place the computer in service on the second quarter. It's also a 5-year property. So we would now find the mid-quarter convention for the second quarter. This is the second quarter table. 5-year, first year, the depreciation factor is 25%. So we multiply the cost of the computer of 3,000 times 25%. We get $750 worth of depreciation in 2022. And we can actually go through all the property the same way. And I'm not going to go through step by step, but you certainly can and probably should, again, if you're not familiar with this. So you can see we got 2 items placed in service in the third quarter and 2 items placed in service in the fourth quarter. And you would just go to those mid-quarter tables for each of those quarters, first year. And depending on the recovery period, you can see everything else is a 7-year recovery period. You'd calculate depreciation for each one of these. And clearly it's not 2009, we're in 2022. So what if she doesn't buy the asset? And of course, the reason I do that is so I can eliminate the mid-month convention, right? So if she doesn't buy the asset, then she's only got the October purchase. But the total amount's only 39.5. So 14,000 divided by 39.5 is less than or equal to 40%. So the half-year convention would apply. And now we can go through all the steps. But the half-year convention table, notice it basically includes 3, 5, 7, 10, 15, and 20-year property. So there's not a separate table. There's just a single half-year convention table. But it would function identical. So if we were going to do the copier, for example, we'd say first year. For 5-year properties, 20%. So we just take 20% of 1,500. For the computer, it was also 5-year, so we take 3,000 times 0.2 as well. And we can calculate out the rest of those. And you can see that it is actually a little simpler to do the half-year convention because it all comes from one table, and you tend to use the same rate over and over and over again, right? 0.2 and 0.1429 are etched into my mind permanently for the rest of time. Okay, so you can see the cost recovery is actually more if she doesn't buy the equipment, and that's exactly what the mid-quarter convention is designed to prevent. All right, so let's do year 2 because we just need to be explicit and make sure you understand how we would do the second year's depreciation. So now we're in 2023. And if we were to do the copier, for example, we take a second year factor of 32%. And just so we know, we always calculate that factor against the original cost. So even though this is declining balance depreciation, the tables are constructed to do the declining balance. So you always calculate it against its original cost, which in this case was $1,500. And you would do the same thing with the computer. You're going to march down the table every time. So when I start in a column, I stay in a column. And I do that for the life of the asset, or if I dispose of the asset, whichever comes first. So a couple things worth noting, right? First is because the half-year convention, a 5-year asset actually takes 6 years to depreciate. A 7-year takes 8 years. It's true. Oh, shoot, I truncated the tables. Let's see if I go back a few slides if I have them all. I bet I don't. Oh, here we go. See, you can see that a 5-year asset goes into the 6th year. And that's because you're only taking half of it in year 1, and then you're picking up the remainder in the final year, which in this case would be year 6 because it's 5-year property. Sorry, let's click through that. The second item is knowing that the table takes care of the convention in the first year. We notice we didn't have to multiply anything by half. So the table takes care of the convention in all the years except the year of disposal. So if you dispose of an asset before you've recovered its entire cost, you actually have to do a manual intervention on the table amount because the table has no idea when you're going to dispose of the property, if at all. It basically assumes you're going to hold it till the end. So if you don't hold it until the end, you need to do some sort of manipulation. So this is just a mathematical proof that shows you how double declining balance can be calculated. If you're not interested, feel free to just cut this video now because we're going to start a new one with the next time. But if you want to stick around and watch the math, here we go. So let's say I bought a $1 asset with a 5-year life. In year 1, to calculate double declining balance, I take $1 divided by 5 for 5 years. I'd multiply that by 200% because it's double declining balance. And to multiply that by a half year because, of course, I need to use the half-year convention. What do I get? I get 20%. Does that agree to the table? Yes, absolutely. That is depreciation factor for year 1, 5-year property, half-year convention. Then we move on to year 2. Now remember, I'm doing the calculation of double declining balance. The tables, it's not required. So now my asset is down to 80 cents, right? Because it was $1, I took 20 cents in the first year. Now I'm down to 80 cents. 80 divided by 5 times 2 times 1, because I get a whole year in the second year, is 32%. And does that agree to the table? And I think if you have your tables, you'll look at it and be, yeah, that totally agrees. Year 3, remember I've got declining balance, so I get rid of the 20 cents and the 32 cents. Now I'm down to 48 cents divided by 5 times 2 times 1, 19.2. And yeah, it agrees to the table. Year 4, I'm down to 0.288 divided by 5 times 200 times 1, 11.52%. Did you even check the table to make sure that it agrees? I bet you didn't. And then year 5, down to 17.28 cents, divided by 5 times 2 times 1 is 6.912. If you had been checking, you would know that does not agree to the table. And that's because the depreciation rules written by the IRS allow you to change to straight line when straight line results in a larger depreciation deduction. So if we switch to straight line, we'd say, all right, well, I'm at 17.28 cents. I've got a year and a half of life remaining. If I do that math, I get 11.52%. And I bet you if you go look at the table, it's going to agree. Okay. So now let's shift to real property, but we'll do that in the next video.